Welcome to Lecture 2, Week 7, Training Program Design 2. Objective of Lecture 2 is to know application of training principle in muscular strength program design. So, objective of Lecture 2 is to know how you apply the concepts of principles in muscular strength program design. The second objective is to know the different stimulations to apply for muscular strength gain. The outcome of lecture 2 is to design a muscular strength gain program. So you should able to demonstrate how would you design your strength program using the concepts of program designing and applying different stimulations, thereby creating a customized strength program design for yourself. Let's begin by recollecting what are the concepts that we need to consider before you design a program. These are the two principles of program design, that is the gas principle and principle of specificity. Let's begin by the application of gas principle in muscular strength program design. Recall gas principle. The first thing that you should be considering to apply gas principle is you should be giving a stimulation for a workout design. So you should be considering that you should be aware whether you are giving a stimulation or not in a workout, and are you giving different types of stimulation or not. And the second point that you have to consider to apply gas principle is, are you providing enough recovery after the stimulation so that a supercompensation stage is achieved after every workout or after every week. Now, how do you apply the first concept in gas principle, that is how do you consider whether you are giving a stimulation or not? It starts by recalling what are the different ways you can provide stimulation in order to achieve the goal of muscular strength development. And these are, you increase the external load, you increase the velocity of movement at submaximal load or submaximal weight, you use isometric holds, and the last, you increase your muscle size in order to gain the muscular strength. When you use the stimulation where you are increasing greater load, the intensity that is prescribed in order to achieve muscular strength is in between 65% of 1 RM to 100% of 1 RM. Now you choose 65% or 100% depending upon your current muscular strength level and your exercise history. So this is the general range which should be used if the aim is to increase muscular strength. The general again guidelines for muscular strength gain, when you use greater external load or greater external weight, is you progress the weight by 5 to 10% by every stimulation. At every stimulation, if you are training your upper body muscles, and if you are training your lower body muscles, you should be increasing the stimulation, that is you should be increasing the load or weight by 10 to 20% at every stimulation. Now when you use a second type of stimulation where instead of focusing on increasing the external weight, you focus by doing the exercise at a higher velocity at submaximal weight. When you use this kind of stimulation, the recommended velocity of movement is in between 0.75 meter per second to 1.3 meter per second, and the corresponding weight is in between 85% of 1 RM to 25% of 1 RM. Now you monitor the velocity of movement using the velocity based training method that is covered in week 5 of anaerobic training methods. Now isometric hold type of stimulation to gain strength is used specifically to improve that sticky points in your exercise. whenever you do any resistance training, there is one point in your range where it's the most difficult to lift or push the weight. That point is called sticking point. And one of the way to overcome that is isometric holds, where you hold the weight for 6 to 10 seconds throughout the range of motion at a submaximal weight. Recollect anaerobic training methods that is covered in week 5, which explores isometric hold method of training. So you use isometric hold as a stimulation if you want to improve your muscular strength, specifically for advanced exercisers and specifically to improve the sticky point in a range of motion, to improve the range of motion at the sticking point of an exercise. Now, how do you apply the second concept of gas principle, where you could provide an optimal recovery? As mentioned earlier, stimulation is required, but stimulation is not required at every workout and by week. So how do you manage to maintain an optimal recovery so that supercompensation is achieved? By applying the load theories, which are standard load, linear load, step load, or concentrated load. Now recollect this load theories concept which was covered in week 3. So if you want to apply an optimal recovery, you make sure that in week 1 you are giving a stimulation, then in week 2 you are giving a retaining load. Maybe 2 weeks back to back you are giving a stimulation load, then third week you are giving a retaining load. So these are the different ways you can apply recovery and give a chance to get a new supercompensation level. Now let me demonstrate how do you use this concept of program in designing a strength program for yourself. It starts by recollecting your self-exercise history, where you use the acute training variable concept, the first concept of program design. So the first is exercise history. And how would you know the exercise history? You simply use F, I, T, V and P. So I'm giving you a demonstration of designing a muscular strength program for myself. So my previous workout, I have a gap of 1.5 months in my last training session. So around 6 weeks of gap. Before that, I was exercising regularly for 9 months, where the frequency of my training for muscular strength was minimum 2 days and maximum 3 days of muscular strength workout. At what intensity I was exercising? I was exercising in between 2 RM to 8 RM. What type of resistance training I was implementing to have a muscular strength gain? I was doing, here the type means what type of stimulation you have actually used. I have used greater weight, and then I have used greater velocity of movement, but at 1 meter per second to 1.3 meter per second. So I was using a relatively lighter load to lift and move at a higher velocity. So the volume that I was training was around 10 to 12 sets per week per muscle group. Okay, so you don't use the progression in this case. Now this is my background. Now the job is to design a muscular strength program considering this background and considering the gap of 6 weeks. Okay, this is the first step you follow before you design the program. You recall your exercise history by applying the acute training variables. Now this helps you to give a perfect understanding about what kind of workout one follows in the previous program. If you want to apply gas principle, you have to know what kind of stimulation was given and at what level it was given. Only then an optimal stimulation can be used, thereby following the gas principle and getting the results. Now let's move to the next step of program designing. For that, the template that I'm using is, again, it starts by applying the acute program variables. Week 1, week 2, week 3, week 4, week 5, week 6. Here I'm trying to demonstrate 6-week muscular strength gain program for myself. I hope it is clear by now that a program designing is not a workout design. Workout designing, which normally is considered as a program design, is selection of exercise only. Nowhere in this lecture I have mentioned what kind of exercise you should be doing, upper body or lower body, push or pull. I have not mentioned that because that is not the concept and the part of program designing. That is the part of workout designing. And this may lead to a confusion. So I would like to clear here that a program designing is completely different than a workout design. Now let's start by filling up my weekly FITTVP where I apply the concept of program designing. The first concept I have used is the first concept I have used here is acute training variables. Now, this variables would help me to describe my 6 weeks of program. Now, the second concept here is I have to make sure that I provide an optimal recovery and stimulation. So, the concept 2, optimal recovery. Recall that optimal recovery can be applied by using different loading theories. Considering my gap of 6 weeks, and okay, I would also add here is my current muscular strength level is at capacity of lifting 1.2 strength index at body weight 74 kgs. This is for my upper body, and for my lower body it is 1.3 strength index at body weight 74 kg. This is my lower body muscular strength. So this is the baseline. This is the zero baseline that I have before starting a program for muscular strength. So 1.2 strength index means I have a capacity of generating internal force to lift 1.2 times my body weight's external load. This is what it means. And the program design that I'm going to do, the aim is to increase this baseline. So here I will be applying the concept 2 of optimal recovery by choosing one week of standard load followed by 2:1 week of standard step load. So the total 2 plus 1, 3 weeks. This is 1, 4 weeks. So I have another 2 weeks. So, and then followed by 1 week of linear load followed by 1 week of retaining load. So this is my loading paradigm design for myself to provide an optimal recovery. So the concept is not to give stimulation for week by week or workout by workout, and also not giving too much of gap in between the stimulation. So I'll be giving a stimulation in week 1, one stimulation for upper body, one stimulation for lower body. In week 2, I'll be giving 2 stimulation for upper body and lower body per week, and I'll be giving week by week. And in week 3, I'll be giving stimulation for every workout 2 times in a week. And in this is my first mesocycle where I am giving a stimulation, one stimulation. In the second mesocycle, I am giving one stimulation per week, and I am giving it back to back for 2 weeks. In the third mesocycle, I am giving 2 stimulation per week back to back. Now if you see, there is a progression in giving stimulation, and I have chose this type of stimulation because your stimulation amount, the quantity, would decide how much time it would take for you to recover, and also your previous exercise background, that will also decide how much volume and intensity of stimulation is enough for you, so that you do not need a large amount of recovery time. So considering my exercise background, I have chosen this loading paradigm to have an optimal recovery. Again, there is no one standard way of giving this loading paradigm for optimal recovery. It is absolutely customizable, and it is absolutely differ from one person to another. What I mean is, you would design a loading optimal paradigm considering your understanding and concept and experience, and I would be designing differently. The aim here is to make sure that are you providing an optimal recovery, and are you providing an enough stimulation, and the sequence of stimulation and retaining is appropriate, so that the gas principle is followed. Now let's start by applying this optimal recovery for all the 6 weeks. So you start by considering the progression that you want to give. The way to fill up the FIDT VP is not going a sequence of first F, then I, then T. Especially when you are an experienced exerciser. Someone who is a beginner, you start with directly frequency. But someone who is an advanced exerciser, you first consider how are you going to give a progression. And that would depend upon your exercise history. So I have a 6 weeks of gap. So my progression would be by greater volume. 6 weeks of gap, absolutely 0 sets per week per muscle group. So I would start by providing 10 sets per week per muscle group of training. That's the volume I have decided. Why? Because my previous volume was in between 10 to 12 sets. That was my working capacity. So I choose to start with 10 sets per week per muscle group. Here, greater load would be difficult for me to lift at this point, considering it was a 6 weeks of gap. So I choose greater velocity at submaximal load of stimulation at 20% of 1 RM with 1 to 1.3 meter per second velocity. So that's the stimulation I chose. Now intensity is mentioned as, because I choose a relatively low intensity and volume, here I am mentioning 20 to 30% of my 1 RM, and the frequency is 2 per week. So how I choose to do it, I am going full body exercise and I am going to do it 2 times. That's how my week 1 of standard load program design would look like. Now you progress to week 2. Now the loading paradigm that is used is 2:1 standard load. It means for 2 weeks, week 2 and week 3, I am going to give a stimulation, and in week 4 I am going to give a retaining load or detraining load. So again, now you begin with progression again. Now here the previous progression is volume. Maintaining the volume, now I am going to increase greater weight. Okay, so because it is greater weight, so it would reflect at the intensity, and that would be around 10 RM to 8 RM. Why I choose that? Because the test that I have done it at 8 RM. So I have tested my upper body strength and lower body strength to lift a maximum of 8 RM. So considering this background, I choose an intensity of 10 to 8 RM by giving a stimulation. So I'm going to lift a load that will make me do maximal 8 repetition, not more than that. So the type of stimulation that I will be giving here is greater weight. The sets I choose to do same as that of week 1. The frequency would be also same. So I'm going to do 2 upper full body workouts for 2 times. Now in week 3, because it is 2:1 stimulation loading paradigm, so in week 3 I again give a stimulation. Here now you have an option. You may continue with the same stimulation or you may give a different type of stimulation. As an expert advice, I would consider you play with different type of stimulation. Now within week 1 and 2, you do not find a cycle of stimulation at this moment. So when you create a cycle of stimulation, what it means is, in week 2 you have given stimulation by greater week. Now in week 3 you give stimulation by greater velocity at submaximal load. But at previously the load was 20 to 30% of 1 RM. Now you may give a progression from 20 to 30% of 1 RM to around 30 to 40% of 1 RM and try to lift at 1 to 1.3 meter per second of velocity. Now you have created a cycle of stimulation. The first cycle, you provide the stimulation by greater volume and greater velocity of movement. The second week, you give stimulation by increasing the weight, and that becomes your cycle of stimulation, which you can follow throughout the remaining 6 weeks. So let's fill up the week 3 now. You have chosen what kind of progression you give, that is reflected in the type of stimulation, that is greater velocity at submaximal load. The intensity you choose is 30 to 40% of 1 RM, and the frequency would be same. Full body, you are going to do it 2 times. Now this covers the week 3. Now in week 4, you have a choice. If you consider that the week 3 workout was, the set here would be again 10 sets per week per muscle group. The reason you should be maintaining the volume low is muscular strength doesn't really demand you should be doing a very high volume of workout. The aim is to provide stimulation to the neuromuscular system and the muscular system to increase the maximal ability of force generation. That can be achieved by a moderate volume, to start with 10 sets per week per muscle group. So in week 4, it is a retaining load. So you can choose to have a retaining load or a detraining load. A retaining load would be same workout as of week 3, and a detraining load would be a little less in volume or intensity. So let's choose, you give or you design a retaining load. So same workout as of week 3. Now week 5, the mesocycle, the loading paradigm is linear load. Linear load means you give stimulation after every workout and after every week by week. Because I have a gap of 6 weeks, I will not give a linear load for more than 1 week, because I do not have that recovery capacity from the linear load. So I choose 1 week of linear loading paradigm. So here now you choose a progression. Recollect the cycle. In week 1 I gave greater weight, in the next week I gave greater velocity. Because it is a linear load and I am going to give stimulation for 2 sessions within the workout, I choose by increasing greater weight, stimulation, as well as greater velocity at submaximal load. That's how I give the progression, and I am going to reflect it in the intensity part. So with respect to greater load, the previous greater load was 10 to 8 RM. Now I am going to consider 6 RM to 8 RM. Your velocity, the stimulation through greater velocity is given by maintaining the velocity of 1.3 meter per second of movement of velocity at 40 to 50% of 1 RM. So I'm trying to lift a little more submaximal load, but at a higher velocity. So the progression is reflected here. The type of stimulation is greater weight and greater velocity of movement. And volume would be again same, 10 sets per week per muscle group. And week 6 would be same as week 5 because it is a retaining week. And that's how you have a customized 6 weeks muscular strength program design, where you have applied all the concepts of program designing and make sure that the gas principle and this principle of specificity is completely applied, so you can have a guaranteed results of increasing muscular strength gain at the end of week 6. So in summary, there are multiple ways to give stimulation for muscular strength gain. Greater weight as a stimulation is most popular method of stimulation for muscular strength gain. 65 to 100% of percent RM should be used as a stimulation for greater weight stimulation. Method of stimulation for muscular strength gain are velocity based training and isometric hold training. You make sure that you apply principle of specificity to choose the type of stimulation for your given training period, that is for the given training mesocycles. Thank you.